Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here, and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today I'm taking a look at this, the Academy P-40B in 1/72nd scale. So join me as I get stuck in the box and see what this one is like. So starting off on the front, we can see this image. It's this sort of very exciting image of these pilots running towards the aircraft to get ready and fly off on a mission. On the top here, it just says P-40B. It tells us there's optional position for the landing gear and the weaponry. It says that there are fully engraved panel lines, which we, love to see. And there are 46 injection molded parts. Bottom left, it tells us the scale of 1/72, but there's no glue and paint. There's only one model. There are no figures. And the actual product can be a bit different from pictures shown on the box, which we know Academy likes to do. They will often show you one thing on the box and potentially not have it inside the box with maybe a different version or different paint scheme. So a little bit managed already, our expectations are. We know we're not getting a figure, but we know that we have raised landing gear. So strange. Flipping over onto the thin edge here, you can see we've got the same image effectively twice, just one without a background, and it repeats the same information. Now, looking at this image of the aircraft here, this is a built version, and I have to say, going straight off of that image, although it has the general shape of a P-40, it doesn't look quite right. So we'll see as we go through. Thin edges have the same information, although we've got an item code of 12456. Onto the other long edge, we have some information in different languages, health and safety. We have an importer's stamp here for Bachmann, and that's pretty much it. Although actually we do have a copyright date of 1987. Copyright dates aren't always tooling dates, so take that with a pinch of salt. However, spoilers, I would be keen to say that 1987 is the tooling date for this. So effectively, there has only ever been like one version of this kit, and this is pretty much it. It's just in constant manufacture. So let's get inside the box and see what we have. We'll start with the paperwork, as is quite normal. We have a health and safety sheet or a warranty sheet. We have some hints and tips, as is quite common with Academy kits, and then there's a health and safety sheet, but I'm not going to dig into that because I don't see the point. We will quickly have a look at the decals there here. So the decals then, these seem to be like, I want to say like the older generation of Academy decals. Academy generally makes decals that work, but they can be tricky to use. They tend to be a bit thick, a bit papery. Printing is not the best. I have seen better printing, but it seems usable, doesn't it? And you can see we only have like enough stuff here for one paint scheme. I hope they go onto the model okay. They look like they'll be usable, but I have seen better from other companies. Fairly simple. Then we come on to our instructions, which is an A4 piece of paper. All printed in black and white, unfortunately. We have a key to the different symbols and then our painting instructions. So painting instructions printed in black and white can be a little bit tricky because, what shade of grey are you painting what? Some of it can get mixed up and it's difficult to tell. I think I probably will go off of the box art and also do some research online to see where different shades and things should go. It would appear that this is an AVG aircraft, also known as the Flying Tigers, and it doesn't tell us anything about that particular plane, but it seems to be like an identical scheme that Airfix have done in the past, so potentially I might look at the instructions for that one to see how to paint it. Flipping over, we have a pilot. They said no figures were included. Figures not included. Okay, so maybe they don't count a pilot as a figure? I guess not. Pilot in a chair and a control panel, and that's about it. Prop gets made up and it should be freely rotatable by the looks of it if you don't glue that in. Landing gear can be glued on. We have the options of a drop tank or a bomb. Install a few little extra bits and pieces inside the fuselage as well as the prop. Wing surfaces get glued together. And now we're at the point where we either have the option to have our landing gear raised or lowered, depending on which bit we put in, or our bomb or our drop tank. And we can come to this step where we add our sort of guns on our nose and then the clear parts. And that's it. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Not many parts in this at all. And most of them, like if you're doing wheels up, you're not going to need all the other ones. So actually you reduce the part count down. So clear parts then are molded to a moderate quality. The flash doesn't seem to be particularly present. Perhaps the plastic isn't quite as crystal clear as I've seen from other manufacturers. The canopy frames are relatively proud, so it'll make masking them fairly straightforward using a knife and tape. I question the thickness of the canopy frames. They look to be quite thick, and also the shape may be a little bit questionable. But yeah, mold quality wise, not terrible. I've seen better, but these are okay by the looks of it. This then brings us on to the plastic parts, which are on 4 sprues and molded in a slightly olivey grey kind of colour. Just because I've got this one here, this is sprue B, and this has one of our fuselage halves on it. The details on that are rather simple. We do have recessed panel lines, but they are very subtle, hardly even present. On the inside, there is no detail, but the ejector pins are on this side. We also have our drop tank, bomb, raised landing gear, nose spinner and control column, as well as a pilot. And I'm not going to lie, that pilot looks awfully like the Airfix pilot. I don't have an Airfix pilot to hand, but from my eye, this looks very similar. It's almost like a copy of the Airfix pilot that they included with their sort of vintage kits. So keep that thought in mind, because I have heard things about this one. So yeah, dimensionally, I would correct the nose looks quite chunky on this one. Maybe it just seems a little bit off, but mold quality is okay. There's not much in the way of flash. The plastic is relatively dense and not particularly greasy. Next is the lower wing surfaces. Again, the same kind of level of detail. We have recessed panel lines, but the detail is very simple. Tail surfaces, tail wheel and landing gear parts. And flip it over. The same kind of deal on this side. There is a little bit of flash in places, a few little bits that need cleaning up, but generally not too bad. Small point, if you do want to, if you don't want to have your bomb or your drop tank installed, you are going to have to fill in those holes on the bottom. I would prefer to have holes that I need to drill out rather than holes that I need to fill. So coming onto this sprue then, we have our upper wing halves, the other side of our fuselage, again, very simplistic and slightly questionable shape. We also have the control, sorry, not the control, we have the cockpit floor, which is very basic. The wings, the machine guns are just molded blobs, and I presume this is a pitot tube, and again, that's just like a molded blob. So level of detail is a bit poor, and we do have a sink mark here at the wing root, which I presume is from one of these sort of mounting points. No internal details either. Next one then is just the extra bits and pieces. The propeller, wheels, generally quite simple looking. The wheels, they look a bit off center. I'd say the mounts for that look off center. Control panel has some molded detail on it, but very simple, very simplistic. Mounts for our bomb or drop tank. The nose machine guns, very simple. Bit of flash on the chair as well. Yeah, generally that's the feel from this kit, isn't it? It's very simple, it's very basic, it looks a little bit crude, so not, the best P40 that I've seen. So let's wrap up. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 olivey grey plastic parts, as well as 1 clear sprue with our windows and things, which are molded to a nice-ish quality. Details are a bit soft and a bit lacking. It looks overly simple, but dimensionally, from my eye, the model kit looks like a representation of the P40 rather than an accurate scale model. We had other bits and pieces of paperwork in there, but we did have 1 decal sheet for 1 decal scheme for the Flying Tigers in China. And yeah, decals look okay. They look usable, but I think, you know, there have been better sort of versions of this sort of reproduced version in 1/72 scale. And we do have instructions which are printed in black and white, very basic, but perhaps a little bit, you know, of color would have helped, especially with these. So yeah, positives then. Not much in the way of flash. Generally looks to be a fairly simple kit to build, and we do have a pilot, which is great, and we have the option to raise our landing gear. No display stand included, which is a bit of a shame, but perhaps I'll add my own one. Cons then, it looks very simple. The details are very crude, and dimensionally, again, I question its accuracy. The reason why there may be dimensionally, you know, some questionability there is because I have heard, and this was kind of typical of what Academy would have done in the past, is they took old toolings and sort of like remodeled them. So I have heard that this potentially is based off of the Frog tooling, which is a little bit older, and they've upgraded it to have, you know, recessed panel lines and things. That brings me to that point I made about the pilot. The pilot looks awfully like the Airfix pilot, so I wonder if they somehow managed to copy that as well. If you go into this just having, you know, like just wanting to build something and not expecting it to be particularly accurate, then perhaps not too bad, because actually in the UK at the time I'm making this, the absolute like cheapest prices that you can get this for is about £4. So it's, you know, very pocket money kit. And I think that is kind of replicated in the value that we've seen. It's like, it has like not a lot going on for it, does it? The only problem I have with such a cheap kit is that if you saw this on the shelf compared to, say, for example, the Trumpeter kit or the Airfix kit, which I've built both of, and they were quite nice, they are like more than double what this one effectively costs. So you might think you get this thinking it was the same kind of kit, but actually I think quality-wise, both the Trumpeter and the Airfix version are somewhat leagues ahead of this. That, of course, goes to the fact that it's potentially based off of an older tooling. This one was done in 1987, so it is quite old now. And whilst there have been some re-releases of this kit, this is pretty much what you see, what you get. This is always has been this one. I don't even think they've done it in other paint schemes. If I just swing back to the price very briefly, so you can pick it up for about £4 here in the UK, but some sellers online seem to be pushing it up slightly higher to like the £6 bracket. My advice, if you were to get this one, would just be try and find it as cheaply as you can. It's not worth paying more than a £5 for this, in my opinion, based on what we've seen inside of the kit. And with that, I think I'm probably going to wrap this one up here. Yeah, this is a crude kit. I think it will be an interesting build. I'll probably use it as a paint mule to try out new paints or something like that. But I don't think it's a particularly serious model of the P-40. It'll look like one at the end, but it won't be the best one out there. And with that, I'm going to call this video here. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of my review and if my assessment of this kit was fair. As always, a quick shout out to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. Massive thanks to these guys on screen, and if you'd like to join them, check out the links in the description. There are other ways to help support the channel as well, and again, full info is below the video. The best way to support the channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.